Hello. Today I'd like to focus a bit on a species spotlight, and I am going to focus on the Coral Beauty Dwarf Angel. The Coral Beauty is kind of an interesting fish because it's very popular. It's not super expensive. It runs usually for the wild caught about $25 to $35 if you've got a smaller size one. Obviously it runs more if it's captive bred. If it's captive bred, it goes about $70. But it's a popular choice in home aquariums because you don't need to have, a 6 to 8 foot tank like you do with the other angelfish, the larger ones. So the dwarf angels tend to be a popular choice for, like the 3 to 4 foot long tanks. And even some people have even put them in biocubes, although personally I don't recommend that just because your chances for success are very slim in terms of the fish not turning aggressive. All dwarf angels are semi-aggressive by nature. Now the good news is the Coral Beauty in general, and this is a general statement, so obviously fishes are individuals. Coral beauties are generally on the lower end of the aggression spectrum. Unlike the flame angel, which tends to be a bit more aggressive. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I've already removed a flame angel that I had in my smaller 36-gallon bow front. And yeah, I probably will not get another flame angel. The Coral Beauty has been virtually a model citizen. This particular one that I have, that is. He really hasn't shown much of any aggression towards his tank mates at all. He just swims around, and he's just kind of a good community fish that kind of does his own thing. So you can see he loves grazing on algae around the tank, which is good. And that brings me to my next point, which is if you are going to get a dwarf angel, and it doesn't matter if it's a Coral Beauty, it doesn't matter if it's, a Potter's, a Flame Angel, or whatever it is, any of the dwarf angels, I strongly recommend having an established tank with plenty of algae for them to graze on. This gives them less of a chance, as you know, because they are considered with caution, with nibbling on your corals. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed. You still have a chance that your fish is going to nibble at corals, but it will put you in a position where the chances of success are significantly greater with them leaving your corals alone and behaving themselves. The other thing that's really good, as you can see here, I actually have a couple of seaweed clips because all the fish go nuts for it. I feed seaweed daily, as well as 2 small feedings per day of Reef Frenzy. And that seems to basically keep this Coral Beauty happy. Now, I only have a couple of Euphyllia frags. As you can see here, I have a frog spawn and a hammer. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that the Coral Beauty never ever nipped at these corals. He never, touched them. The Coral Beauty has, but it's been more of like the once in a blue moon type exploratory nip. And as you can see here, these corals certainly are not suffering any kind of ill effects from that. I mean, these are single frags, and quite frankly, they're huge at this point. Looking good and healthy. And as a matter of fact, I even saw the Coral Beauty early this morning take a little exploratory nip from the underside of this hammer, and the hammer coral, just as you can see here, doesn't really seem to care. So now, I will say this, you may notice I don't have anything like zoanthids, Duncans, or anything like that in my tank. I'll be honest with you, the only corals I've ever had any luck with are Euphyllia corals. It's all I can grow for whatever reason, which is fine by me because I actually like them. They're among my favorite corals anyways. But so I cannot comment on the Coral Beauty with, say, softies, soft leather mushrooms, zoanthids, or any of those other kinds of corals that are very popular in full-fledged reef tanks. So keep that in mind. My experience is based on how my Coral Beauty has reacted to having, a couple of Euthelia frags in the tank and interacting with them. The Coral Beauty is considered to be one of the hardiest of the angels. I do think it makes a difference where you get the Coral Beauty from. The Coral Beauty, generally, you'll have better coloration and luck, in my personal opinion, if you get them from Fiji, if they're sourced from there originally. Versus the ones that come from Indonesia. Part of it, I think, is the capture methods. They're probably doing things that you shouldn't be doing over there in Indonesia. Shame on you for that. But for Fiji, you tend to get a little more bold coloration, and they tend to be a little bit hardier. And of course, if you go with one of those Biota Palau captive bred Coral Beauties, then yes, you're going to get very bold and intense coloration, and it's going to be a super hardy fish. Now, my Coral Beauty has been quite the hardy fish. I can't believe what this guy has been through, and has bounced back from it very quickly every single time he's had an issue. Nothing but praise for this little guy. He's a heck of a fish. When I first got him, he was in the tank with a yellow tang. They seemed to be getting along well at the time, so I actually bought both of them together since they were already in a holding tank together. When he got fished out of the tank, he really didn't want to go. He actually bit the net and ended up injuring his head somewhat in the netting and removal process, just because he simply wouldn't let go, and we had a hard time getting him out. So the injury to his head healed within a few days. Then a few days later, he ended up getting ick. He bounced back from that. He's also dealt with some extreme aggression from the yellow tang, which ended up turning out to be an absolute butthead of a fish. He ended up taking a chunk out of the Coral Beauty's lower fin, which is basically healed at this point. I think if you look really close at the bottom tip, you can see it's not quite as well defined as the top. But he took tail wax from the yellow tang's scalpel, which did cause some superficial damage to the side of the Coral Beauty. You could see some white marks where it had gotten cut. And at that point, I said, all right, the yellow tang, you are done. And so I removed him. The Coral Beauty's aggression level, the only things I have ever seen out of him are occasionally I have this little pajama cardinal you can see back there. If the pajama cardinal happens to be directly in his way, occasionally he'll do one of those little sort of charge, get out of my way sort of things. But that's the extent of it. Once the pajama cardinal, moves even a few inches out of its direct path, the Coral Beauty totally leaves it alone and just goes back to doing what he was doing. And sometimes, of course, during feeding, he can get a little bit assertive over his food source, but I don't care. Even if you've got a peaceful fish, it's going to do that. So once again, the Coral Beauty, great fish. As I said, if you source it from the right places, it's a very hardy and durable little angel fish, and it's just a good one to go with. As I said, they are considered with caution, as with all dwarf angels, but once again, I do believe that you can increase your chances of success by making sure that there's plenty of seaweed fed to it on a daily basis, feeding it on a daily basis, seaweed, and then making sure your tank is established and has some algae for it to graze on. And it'll just sit there and kind of go around and graze on algae in the tank, and then it'll feed in between. So as you can see here, he really loves to nibble on that algae around the tank heater, and quite frankly, he can have all of that he wants. So in that sense, he actually performs a help to the tank. So anyways, that's kind of my experiences with the Coral Beauty Dwarf Angel. Personally, if you're going to attempt a Dwarf Angel, they're at the top of my list for recommendations. In terms of, just being a good chance of having a decent fish who's not really going to cause any severe damage to your corals, in terms of not being as aggressive as some of the other dwarf angels, and particularly pygmy angels can be, and just in general being a good tank mate, providing you with color. And once again, they are a cheap dwarf angel to buy. They're probably one of the cheapest at $25-35 for a wild caught one that's small. And then also that once again, as long as you source them right, they are very hardy fish, very, very durable. As I said, mine's been through all kinds of stuff, and he just keeps bouncing back and just keeps on going. So anyways, that's all I've got on the Coral Beauty, and thanks for watching.